He's already here. Cool. So, let's see. We'll give it a few seconds here to get some people in on the live stream before I start in on it. And so every Friday I've been going to the movies lately, going to the Columbia Theater, which is a little theater here in Astoria, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like old school, the old school seats, and they have set up some couches and tables, and they serve pizza and beer and wine and stuff in there. So it's a pretty cool place to hang out. But they had like these old school movies that they've been showing there, which was a lot of fun. Like, I went and saw The Big Lebowski and, Dazed and Confused, and there was a few other ones that we watched. But they've been showing this everything, everywhere, all the time, or all at once. Like, they've been showing it for like 3 weeks straight now. And so, anyway, I'm not going to go to the movies this week. I'm going to go to a barbecue instead. Have fun doing that. All right. Wow. 58 of you already up in here in the live stream. Okay. So we have been talking a lot about the Cantillon effect and the Cantillon essay on economic theory that he wrote back in like the 1700s. And I thought it would be fun to read chapter 8. I think this is probably one of the most interesting chapters in the whole essay. I mean, all of them are pretty good, especially when he's talking about the increase and decrease of money in the state. But this is chapter 8, and it's titled Further Reflections on the Increase and Decrease of Money in a State. Oh, shoot. I was going to put the links down in the description for you guys. I'm sorry I didn't do that before I started the video. But I'll put links in this video after I upload it. I'm sorry, guys. I was going to put some links to this down in there. But anyway. So the abstract. Increases in the supply of money from the balance of trade eventually causes prices to rise. This in turn puts pressure on domestic producers and increases imports. The result is the balance of trade is reduced and eventually is negative. This is Cantillon's price-specie flow mechanism, which demonstrates the reason for the tendency for equilibrium in international monetary flows. The balance of trade can result in economic power, but this also causes the economy to lapse into luxury and decline. All right, so a lot of you know that I have a reading disability. I really shouldn't call it that because I can read just fine, but what ends up happening is about after 10 minutes of reading, my mind just ends up drifting off, and I have a hard time like focusing in on the words and stuff. This is about, 8 pages long or so, and I'm going to try and read it because I think that the discussion that we can have after reading this chapter is going to be really good because it tells a lot about the condition that we are in right now. So anyway, I'm going to go for it. Bear with me if I start stuttering and stuff. I'll try and do it as cleanly as I can here. All right. So it goes. We have seen that the quantity of money circulating in the state may be increased by working its mines, by subsidies from foreign powers, by immigration of foreign families, by the residence of ambassadors and travelers, but above all, by a regular and annual balance of trade, from supplying goods to foreigners and by receiving from them at least part of the price in gold and silver. It is by this last means that the state grows most substantially, especially when its trade is accompanied and supported by ample shipping and by significant output of raw materials necessary for the production of exported manufactured goods. However, the continuation of this commerce gradually introduces a great abundance of money and, little by little, increases consumption. Foreign products must be imported to meet this demand and must be paid for by the reduction in annual balance of trade. On the other hand, increased expenditures increase the cost of labor and the price of manufactured goods. It often happens that some foreign countries try to set up the same kinds of factories for themselves, in which case they stop buying those of the state in question. Although these newly established factories and manufacturers are not perfect at first, they reduce and even prevent the export of those goods from the neighboring states and into their own country, where they can be acquired at a better price. In this manner, the state begins to lose some branches of its profitable trade, and many of its workmen and artisans who lose their jobs will leave the state to find employment in new foreign factories. In spite of this diminution, did I say that right? Diminution? In balance of trade, the custom of importing various products will continue. If the manufactured product of the state have a great reputation and can be shipped to distant countries at low cost, the state will maintain its advantage over the new foreign manufacturers for many years and will maintain a small balance of trade, or at least keep it even. If, however, some other maritime state tries to perfect the same articles in its navigation at the same time, it will, because of cheapness of manufactures, take away several branches of trade from the state in question. Consequently, the state will begin to lose the balance of trade and will be forced to send part of the money abroad every year in order to pay for its imports. So, if I'm reading that right, guys, it sounds like as the cost of manufacturing goes up within a state, even though you've been exporting and providing like goods for a foreign country, if the exports get expensive enough for those foreign purchasers of that, they will set up their own factories, and even though they're not as good at first, they will eventually perfect it. And if the shipping of these products are cheap enough, they will compete with the manufacturers of that state in question, and then therefore you won't be able to export it altogether. At least that's kind of what I got out of that. All right, let's see here. Excuse me. Moreover, even if the state in question could keep a balance of trade at its greater abundance of money, it is reasonable to suppose that this abundance will plunge many wealthy individuals into luxury. They will buy paintings, precious stones from abroad. They will want silks and rare objects. And they set such an example of luxury in the state that in spite of the advantage of ordinary trade, its money will flow abroad annually to pay for this luxury. This will gradually impoverish the state and cause it to pass from great power to great weakness. When the state has arrived at its highest point of wealth, and I always assume that the comparative wealth of the state consists mainly in the respective quantities of money, it will inevitably fall back into poverty by the ordinary course of things. The too great abundance of money, which gives power to the state so long as it lasts, throws them back impressively, but naturally into poverty. Thus, it would seem that when the state expands by trade and the abundance of money raises the price of land and labor, the prince or the legislator ought to withdraw money from circulation, keeping it for emergencies, and try to slow down the circulation by every means, except compulsion and bad faith, to prevent its goods from becoming too expensive and avoid the drawbacks of luxury. However, it is not easy to perceive the opportune time for this, or to know when the money has become more abundant than it ought to be for the good and preservation of the advantages of the state. Therefore, princes and heads of the republics do not concern themselves much with the sort of knowledge, and strive only to make use of the abundance of the state's revenue, to extend their powers, and to insulate other countries on the most frivolous pretexts. All things considered, working to perpetuate the glory of their reigns and administration, and leaving monuments of their power and wealth, is perhaps their best they can do, because according to the natural course of humanity, the state must collapse on its own. They only accelerate its fall a little. Nevertheless, it seems that they would try to make their power last during the time of their own administration. Now, when I read that the first time, it really made me think about that for a second. I was just like, wow. The state was perhaps the best they can do, because according to the natural course of humanity, the state must collapse on its own. They only accelerate its fall a little. See, it doesn't really matter. That's why I don't follow politics anymore, because it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I mean, they can say anything they want. The natural course of economics and business cycles are going to happen. Free market you can't stop the free market forces. And so anyway, let's move on here. Few years are needed to raise abundance to the highest point in a state. However, still fewer are needed to bring it to poverty for lack of commerce and manufacturing. Without speaking of the rise and fall of Venice Republic, Flanders and Brabant, and the Dutch Republic, who have succeeded each other in profitable branches of trade, one may say that France's power has only been on the rise from 1646, when factories were established to produce clothing which had previously been imported, to 1684, when a number of Protestant entrepreneurs and artisans were driven out of France. That kingdom has done nothing but recede since that last date. I know no better of measure than the leases and rents of, here we go, now listen to this part. I know no better measure than the leases and rents of property owners to judge the abundance and scarcity of money in circulation. When land is leased at high rates, it is a sign that there is plenty of money in the state. But when land has to be leased at a much lower rate, it shows, other things being equal, that the money is scarce. I have read in, I guess, a paper, The State of France, that acres of vineyards near Mantes, not far from the French capital, which leased for 200 livres? I don't know how to say this. Anyway, 200 livres of full weight in 1660, only leased for 100 of lighter money in 1700s. However, the silver brought from the West Indies in the interval should have naturally have raised the prices of land in Europe. The author of The State of France attributes this fall in rent to defective consumption. In fact, it seems that he observed a reduction in wine consumption. However, I think he has mistaken the effect for the cause. The cause was great rarity of money in France, and the effect was the natural decrease in consumption. In this essay, I have always suggested, on the contrary, that the abundance of money naturally increases consumption and contributes above all else to higher valuation of the land. When abundant money raises products to honest prices, the inhabitants eagerly work to acquire them, although they do not show the same eagerness to acquire food and merchandise beyond what is needed for their maintenance. It is clear that the state with more money in circulation than its neighbors has high advantage over them, so long as it maintains this abundance of money. In the first place, given that the price of land and labor are calculated in terms of money, the state where money is most abundant will give up less land and labor than it receives in all areas of trade. Thus, the state in question sometimes receives the product of 2 acres of land in exchange for that of 1, and the work of 2 men for that of only 1. It's because of this abundance of money in circulation in London that the work of 1 English embroiderer costs more than that of 10 Chinese embroiderers, though the Chinese embroiderer embroider much better and churn out much work in a day. In Europe, people are amazed that these people can live by working so cheap, and that the wonderful fabrics they send us cost so little. Secondly, tax revenue are more easily raised in a state where money is plentiful and in relatively larger amounts. This gives the state, in case of war or dispute, the means to gain all sorts of advantages over its adversaries, with whom money is scarce. If there are 2 princes at war over sovereignty or conquest of a state, where one has much money and the other has little money but many estates worth twice the money of his enemy, the first will be better able to attract generals and officers with gifts of money than the second will be, giving twice the value of lands and estates. Grants of land are subject to challenge and revocation and cannot be relied upon like money. With money, munitions of war and food can be bought, even from the enemies of the state. Money can be given for secret services without witness, but land, produce, and goods would not serve these purposes, not even jewelry or diamonds, because they are easily recognized. After all, it seems to me that the comparative power of wealth of a state consists, other things being equal, in the greater or less abundance of money circulating in them. Hec ectu nunc. I guess that's Latin for here and now. And if I got that right, basically what he is saying is that if you have a lot of money, or if you have a lot of land and estates, right? So these are the two people who are fighting. One of them has a bunch of money, the other one has a bunch of land. He's saying that the one with a bunch of money is going to be able to hire pretty much the better army, because he's going to be able to just straight up pay him, where the other person is going to promise him land, but then like the land can be revoked, you may not get it, there's kind of question on it. If you give somebody money, it's theirs, they own it now, and off they go. So that's pretty much what he's saying, is the person who has the money, they're the ones who win. All right. Let's see here, going on. I still have to mention two other methods of increasing the amount of money circulating in the state. The first is when entrepreneurs and private individuals borrow money from the foreign correspondents at interest, or when foreigners send their money into the state. Listen to this. Foreigners send their money into the state to buy shares of government stock, to buy shares or government stock. This often amounts to a very considerable sum on which the state must annually pay interest to foreigners. This method for increasing money in the state do make it more abundant and diminish the rate of interest. You see that? Makes money more abundant and diminishes the rate of interest. With this money, the entrepreneurs in the state find it possible to borrow more cheaply, to provide work, and to establish factories with the anticipation of a profit. The artisans and all those whose hands this money passes through consumes more than they would have done if they had not been employed by the means of this money. This consequently increases prices, just as if the money had belonged to the state, and through the increased consumption or expenditures this causes, public revenues derived from taxes on consumption are increased. Money lent to the state in this manner brings many advantages with it, but in the end, it always burdensome and harmful. The state must pay the interest to the foreigners every year, and aside from this loss, the state is at the mercy of foreigners who can always cause trouble if they decide to withdraw their capital. Surely they will want to withdraw their capital when the state needs it the most, as when preparing for war or defeat is feared. The interest paid to foreigners is always much more considerable than the increase in public revenue caused by this money. One can observe these loans passing from one country to another according to investors' confidence in the states to which they are sent. But in reality, states have paid heavy interest on these loans for many years, will often find themselves bankrupt and unable to repay the capital. When trust is shaken, shares or public stocks fall. Foreign shareholders do not like to sustain losses, preferring to content themselves with collecting interest while waiting for confidence to return. But sometimes it does not return. In declining states, the principal objective of public administrators usually is to restore confidence in order to attract foreign loans. If the ministry does not act in bad faith and keeps its obligations, the money of the subjects will circulate without interruption. In this case, money from abroad has the power of increasing the quantity of money in the state. But the borrowing road, which holds an advantage in the present, leads to a dead end but a flash in the pan. To restore a power state with a shortage of money, a constant and real balance of trade is needed on an annual basis, as is the development through navigation of the articles and manufactures produced cheap and thereby suitable for exportation. Merchants are the first to make their fortunes, then lawyers make it a part of it. The prince and tax collectors get a share at the expense of all others and distribute their grace as they please. When money becomes too plentiful in the state, luxury will follow, and the state will fall into poverty. This is roughly the cycle that may be experienced by a large state which has both capital and industrious inhabitants. Right? So this is roughly the cycle that may be experienced by a large state which has both capital and industrious inhabitants. The talented public administrators is always able to begin the cycle over again. Not many years are needed to see it tried and succeed, at least in the beginning, which makes for the most interesting situation. The increased quantity of money in circulation will be brought about by several factors that my argument does not allow me to examine now. As for the states without much capital, and where capital can only be increased by accident or by particular circumstances of the times, it is difficult to find the means that would allow them to flourish by trade. No administrator can restore the republics of Venice and Holland to their brilliant situation from which they have fallen. But Italy, Spain, France, and England, however poor may be, are still capable of attaining high degree of power by trade alone if led by good administration and if they operate separately. If all these states were equally well administered, they would be great only in proportion to their respective capital and to the greater or lesser industriousness of their people. And when I read that, it made me really think about the European Union and whether or not they should all be together or not. Anyhow, moving on. The last method that I can think of to increase the quantity of money actually circulating in the state is by violence and arms. In this method, it is often blended with others, since in all peace treaties one will try to maintain trading rights and other privileges one could obtain. When a state mandates contributions or makes several other states tributary to it, this is a very sure method of obtaining their money. Makes me think of Russia, Ukraine kind of thing, right? All right. I will not examine the methods of putting this theory into practice, but I will say that all nations who have flourished in this manner have not failed to decline, like states that have flourished through their commerce. The ancient Romans were more powerful in this manner than all other peoples we know of. Nevertheless, these same Romans, before losing an inch of the land of their vast states, fell into decadence through luxury and impoverished themselves by the reduction of money which circulated among them. It was this luxury that caused their empire to pass into the hands of the eastern nations of the Orient. So long as Romans' luxury, which did not begin until after the defeat of Antiochus, king of the Asia, around 564, came from the product of land and the labor of all vast estates of their domain. The circulation of money only increased instead of decreasing. The public was in possession of all the gold, silver, and copper mines of the empire. They had the gold mines of Asia, Macedonia, Aquileia, and the rich mines, both gold and silver, of Spain and other countries. They had several mints where gold, silver, and copper coins were struck. In Rome, the consumption of all goods and merchandise drawn from their vast provinces did not diminish the circulation of money any more than the pictures, statues, and jewels themselves. Although the wealthy landlords spent excessive amounts on their feasts and paid 15,000 ounces of silver for a single fish, all that did not diminish the quantity of money circulating in Rome, given that the provinces made tributes regularly, not to mention the money brought in by lenders and by governors with their extortions. The amounts annually extracted from the mines increased circulation in Rome during the Augustus' whole reign. However, luxury was already on a very great scale, and there was much eagerness, not only for curiosities produced in the empire, but also for jewels from India, pepper and spices, and all the rarities of Arabia. Silks which were not made in the empire began to be in demand there. Nevertheless, the money drawn from these mines still exceeded the sum sent out to the empire to buy all these things. However, Under Tiberius, money became scarce when that emperor collected 2.7 billion sesterces, I don't know, in his treasury. To restore an abundant circulation, he only needed to borrow 300 million on a mortgage of his estate. After his death, Caligula spent all of Tiberius's treasure in less than 1 year, and it was when that abundance of money in circulation was at its highest in Rome, and the wind of luxury kept on blowing. The historian Pliny estimated that in his time the empire exported at least 100 million sesterces annually. This was more than was drawn from the mines. Under Trajan, land prices fell by 1/3 and more. According to younger Pliny, the money continued to decrease until the time of the emperor Septimus Severus. Money was then so scarce in Rome that the emperor collected enormous quantities of wheat, being unable to collect enough tax money for his enterprise. Thus, the Roman Empire declined through the loss of its money before losing any of its estates. That is what luxury brought about. What always will bring about similar circumstances. Woo! Thanks for sitting through that with me, guys. That was a tough one. So, going off of that, it is incredible to think about like the amount of money circulating within the system, driving up all the rents and the lands, bringing in ever increasing amounts of foreign imports, driving out the domestic manufacturing, and everybody buying like expensive cars, expensive houses, and all the things that we now find as far as luxuries go here in the United States. Does it not seem like we're falling right in line with this? I mean, it's just a matter of time before I feel that this whole like dive into luxury is then flipped for poverty, and it really seems like it's taking place now. So anyway, what are you guys talking about? This whole crash mean women will lighten up about the demands from us men and a relationship. Can I finally be a Neanderthal and she'll be happy when I bring home a deer? Wow, that's an interesting way to think about it. I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a little bit on how the impact to society would be. I mean, I would imagine that if you are hurting for money and resources and stuff like that, like family unit is going to be very important for the survival. But, you know, when you have an abundance of money and everything is real plentiful like it is right now, then the idea that you need like a family unit or any kind of like, you know, or just the capabilities of being single is so much easier. Renting a place to be is not, but just being an individual on your own is really not that difficult. Having a family is. All right. What were you reading from? I was reading from Cantillon's essay on economic theory. It was chapter 8, titled Further Reflections on the Increase and Decrease of Money in a State. And I do apologize for not putting the links down in the description. I very much intend to do that as soon as I upload this video. All right. If we dive into poverty, how will we be saved? How will we be saved? If we dive into poverty, how will we be saved? I don't know, man. You got to figure that out on your own. You got to figure out what position that you are in right now and what it is that you can do to best protect yourself from things. I mean, he brings in the idea that it's the dive into luxury, right? So think about that. I mean, if you overexpanding, like bought too expensive of a house, bought too expensive of a car, strung out too much on credit, these are the luxuries, right? These are things that you don't need. Food and energy, these are not luxuries. These are things that you absolutely need in life. So if you think about making a purchase that's not food or energy, consider it a possible luxury. I mean, if it is, then you might want to reconsider that purchase right now, because it's the whole idea of going into luxury that is going to end up driving everybody into poverty. Now, I don't know. I mean, you got to think, like, anytime that a society or an economy has ever collapsed, it's not 100% of the people who fail. It's just most of the people fail. So you got to think, what side of that wedge are you going to end up being on? I mean, are you going to be one of the people who fails, or are you going to be one of the people who ends up succeeding through this economic collapse? And what is that going to end up looking like, and how do you do that? I mean, that's what we're here trying to figure out. I mean, is it buying gold and silver? Is it buying Bitcoin? Is it buying into, you know, the debt of, the debt and shares of a completely destroyed country who's about ready to come back from that? I mean, really, you want to be in places where everybody is fearful. One of the times, like it was a few years ago, I heard Jim Rogers talking about how he wishes he could invest in Venezuela, but as an American, as a United States citizen, you weren't allowed to invest in Venezuela. And I could see why you would want to do that, because you want to invest when they're at their absolute worst. I mean, that you have nowhere to go except for up. Now, you might have to take some time and wait and, and deal with the fact that it's not going to come back right away, but when it does, there's going to be so much room for expansion during that. Did I just get a super chat? There it is. All right. Thank you, Joshua, for the super chat, $4.99. Really appreciate it. So is the Fed attempting to crash the market in order to crash demand for luxuries and to reallocate resources where they are needed? Yeah. I mean, I would assume that's what the Fed is trying to do. I mean, they said it straight up. They are trying to put a damper on consumer demand. Now, they're lifting interest rates to do that. So pretty much what they're telling the people is to stop spending as much money. Well, if you stop spending as much money out there, what you're going to do is you're going to slow economic activity down. That is not good for the economy. I mean, slowing the economic activity down is a very bad deal. That's jobs in the end. In fact, I will put it in the link of this video. There was a great video that George Gammon has recently done talking about stagflation. I'm going to leave a link to it. It's about 17 minutes long, and yeah, I encourage everybody to go check this one out. It was really good. But it goes very much in line with this idea that, the Federal Reserve is going to lift interest rates and they're going to put a damper on consumer demand, but really what the major issue is the supply issue. They even say it over and over again that they're hoping that the lifting of interest rates will put a damper on the consumer, but they're hoping that supply is going to help them out with this. Like, the supply industry is actually going to fulfill the promise of bringing more products and cheaper prices to us. I have to question that, because will rising of interest rates fix a supply chain, a broken supply chain? If you are an entrepreneur, if you are a businessman, and your business is to supply the consumer with products, and the Federal Reserve is saying, hey, we are going to put a damper on the consumer, how eager would you be to distribute products to a consumer that's going to have a difficult time? You see where I'm getting at? They want help from the supply side, but the supply side is going to get nailed by the rising of interest rates because the consumer is not going to be there. Why would you even attempt to supply? So anyway, moving on here. Wow, 700 of you up in here. Awesome. Be sure and hit the like button, guys. We got 192 likes. If there's 700 of you and you all hit the like button, it's going to spread this video around like crazy all over the internet, and we'll get a ton of people up here in the chat. UE, have you heard of the high demand for second passports? Citizenship is for sale and being bought by wealthy Americans. 300% spike in countries such as Portugal. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine people probably want to bail out on whatever it is that they are experiencing as far as whatever country they're in, thinking that there's always someplace better out there somewhere. But I have to question whether or not there's going to be something better out there than what's going to happen here in the United States. I still believe, even though after reading Cantillon's essay and stuff like that, that the United States is going to be the safe haven place for most people. It's not going to be that way forever, but it's going to be that way as many nations and corporations and like the sovereign debt and corporate debt crisis that's going to come. They're gonna go to the safe haven and they're gonna find it inside of the United States. Although they're gonna be mistaken by that, because at some point they're gonna feel like, holy moly, look at the United States. This is the best place that you could possibly be in. I think they're trying to do some work around here, but they're gonna be wrong, because eventually everybody's gonna abandon the dollar and move into something else. Now, if they're very clever about it, when I mean they, the Federal Reserve, they could transition from the failing dollar into a central bank digital currency and be able to take like interest rates into a negative territory. But that's, I mean, who knows? That's very questionable on it. All right, let's move on here. Back up to the super chat. Thank you so much, Zorn76, for the $20. Very cool of you. I quit my job last week, but wanted to send this your way for being an awesome dude and helping people. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I hope you have something lined up or you're in a good position to be okay without employment for a while. But thank you very much for the $20. I really appreciate that, man. The ruble is not ruble. It's backed by gold. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by gold. Okay. I mean, it's probably more backed by gold than anything else is out there, because you got the country that's saying that they would be willing to buy gold at a particular ruble, right? But it's not exactly like an exchangeable item, like at a market price, to say like, hey, you can buy 1 ounce of gold for exactly this many rubles, and that's the exchange rate every single day from now on. You can sell your gold to the central banks, to the Russian government there, but you're going to take a loss on it, right? So it's not like an exact, like, market value transition from ruble to gold. But I mean, I guess it is closer than just about anything else is out there, and a lot of people keep asking me about the ruble. Why is it so strong and like strengthening against the dollar, like the most that it has even since before the war broke out and stuff? I have to question that. I have to question whether or not that's actual true statistics that they are using to come up with that. I think a lot of that is imaginary. But then on top of it, you also have to consider that Russia is demanding that they sell their natural gas and oil and other commodities in rubles, which is going to put strength into the ruble. It's going to put a demand for it in order for those countries to acquire that particular energy. So I could see where the ruble would gain some value as these nations are then trying to acquire the ruble so they can make those purchases. But I don't think they would do that with, like, if they didn't have to. Like, I don't think they truly want to get a hold of the ruble, and hold that. All right, I got another super chat up there. Thank you from Sean, $5. Appreciate it, man. How do you think new construction will be affected in the next year or two? By the way, love your channel and what you do. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much, Sean. I did a great video yesterday, and it's funny because I titled it New Housing Crash, and a lot of people, I think, took that title as like a new housing crash, like the Great Financial Crisis, but it's new housing, like a new house being built crash, right? New housing crash. And I knew people were going to be confused by that, but if you watch the video, you shouldn't be. And there was a few people who commented on that saying, hey, your title's a little misleading with that idea, because a lot of people read that and thinking that I was talking about the housing market, but I never said anything about the housing market. I just said new housing crash. I have a feeling that we are probably going to go into a time here where we are going to have a difficult time finding new construction taking place, especially with these home builders. Take a look at what happened in China. A couple interesting things there in China. They hit those property developers hard. When the rising of interest rates took place in China, and the property developers over there really started coming into some issues as far as rolling their old debt over into new debt, they found themselves going into bankruptcy, or at least default. I don't know about bankruptcy yet, but they're probably going to be heading that way soon. In order for these companies, these corporations, to pay their debts, because you got to think, these are dollar-denominated debts. These are debts that are due in dollars. They are in China, Chinese corporations, nothing to do with the United States, but they borrowed money using dollars. So now they're having a difficult time trying to acquire these dollars. And this is going to be the same situation that goes throughout the rest of the world. I mean, this is one of the things that I keep kind of bringing up, is that we're going to have a sovereign and corporate debt crisis. And you can just see it taking place. I mean, we're finding these countries where it's coming up. And even in with Evergrande, you see that these countries or these corporations, when they went to go and try and borrow money again, they couldn't do it. What did they end up doing? Right? They had to pay their bondholders. They had to, be able to function, so they started selling off their assets. And what happened to the property prices over there? They started plummeting. And so now they have an issue with plummeting house prices and corporations that are having difficulty borrowing money to build new homes. in order to keep the housing market or whatever in a functioning form. Like, one of the things that I have said many times and I've heard from the Federal Reserve is that in order to have a functioning monetary policy, you have to have a good functioning mortgage market. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have house prices continually going up. You just have to have a good functioning mortgage market. And right now, over in China, the mortgage markets are having issues as well. I mean, it's not hard to see that when you take the punch bowl away, that the party is over and the hangovers are going to start kicking in. This is why, like, the federal, like, so many people are screaming about, the Federal Reserve causing a recession and they're hoping for a soft landing, is because it's time to sober up for a while. And nobody wants to. Everybody wants to stay drunk. I mean, if you ever spend any time in your life addicted to anything, like, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. The number one priority is making sure you have enough to get high. All right, that's the number one thing. And it's not even like making sure that you have enough to get high. It's to make sure that you have enough to get high for when you run out, so that you know ahead of time that when you do run out, that you're still going to be able to acquire more, because it's bad times if you don't have it. And so if you just think about it right now, the Federal Reserve is still in an accommodating position, right? Anything under neutral on their Fed funds is accommodating the economy. But just the idea that the lifting of interest rates and the mortgage markets, or the house mortgage rates going up and all the slowdown of consumer demand, it's got people freaking out, right? Because they're about ready to take this punch bowl away, and people are like, oh no, what am I going to do to get high? Right? I mean, I'm high right now, but what am I going to do when I'm not high and I want to get high again, right? And the punch bowl is gone. This is what's freaking everybody out. Wait till it actually goes away and people are really starting to go with it through withdrawals. I mean, that's when it gets really painful. All right, another super chat, man. You guys are hitting me up. I love it. Where's that one at? Did I see it? There it is. A super sticker. Thank you, Naven, for the $5 super sticker. Very much appreciate it, man. Simon, straighten out your titles, bruh. What did this one? Did I misspell this one? 800 of you guys. So awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Always go opposite of the YouTube lackeys. Yes, whatever that means. Man, I want to try that punch bowl. That gets people high. Yeah, I used to have a really big punch bowl. Okay. Yui, are lumber prices stable? I don't think so. I don't think so. What I want to see is, I want to see trucking not be an issue anymore. And then I'll probably put my idea on where prices are going to be for lumber. But right now, I mean, you think about it, lumber mills, and I mean, this is not just one story from one mill that I'm hearing. Lumber mills are stacked with inventory right now, but it's not that they're stacked with inventory because of lack of sales. They say that most of this lumber is sold. Like, they just need to get it out away from their yards, like get it away from the mill. And that's where the major issue is that they cannot find the trucking or the available trucking in a efficient manner to distribute this lumber away from the mill fast enough for them to keep up with their production. So what are they doing? They're curtailing development now during a time in which that there is a demand for this lumber. So you can imagine that once this lumber does make it into the system, there's going to be a break in there where there was production that should have taken place that didn't, because they couldn't get the damn inventory to go through the system, right? So that right there is going to create I would imagine that a window where prices are probably going to spike. But we're coming into a situation in which that lumber should be really moving right now, that there should be a lot of demand for this stuff. And with the rising of interest rates, I could imagine that people are going to postpone future projects. So although we have a lot of projects in the system right now, these are things that have started 6-7 months ago that are now coming into fruition. How long that lasts before, the idea of rising interest rates puts a damper on building homes, that could be like another 6 months down the road, right at the same time that this window of failed production is coming in. You see what I'm saying? There's so much that's going on. It's hard to take all this in to say, okay, what is going to happen in 6 months, because there's a lot that's occurring, that could end up alleviating, I mean, if this trucking issue continues for the next 6 months in the fashion it is, then yeah, we may have a problem, with the mills continuing with curtailing development. But if that's the case, then you're probably going to see lumber prices so dang expensive that, you'll be able to afford the truckers to get it out of there. Anyway, I'm babbling. Let's move on. I saw a few super chats come through there. Let's go take a look here. Joshua again, thank you so much for the $4.99. Do you think political pressure from midterm elections will cause the Fed to reverse course within the next few months to avoid a bad crash? No. I do not think the Federal Reserve really cares anything about the political or the politics that are out there. I think they use a lot of the political narratives out there in order to guide their monetary policy. So, I think they are in conjunction. I think a good example of that was back when Donald Trump was screaming at Jerome Powell about how he should take interest rates lower, take them into negative territory, and that there was no inflation and that they should be printing money. I kind of wonder what kind of position we would be in if we had followed what Donald Trump wanted to do 2, 3 years ago or whatever it was. There's no inflation. Remember that? God, I laughed so hard about that. Okay. Not your problem. Thank you for the $2. Where was that other one? I saw a big one. Oh, Caddy Williams, thank you so much for the $50. Very nice. Do you think we can survive as a species overall because we are so smart, we're stupid at the same time with health, education, politics? What do you think? What do you think, big bro? Well, yeah, I think we can survive as a species. I don't think we can survive like in the fashion that we're headed. I think like, as an individual, we could take a little bit more responsibility for ourselves and what we do, like to the environment, to other people, to everything out there. If we took a little bit more consideration for ourselves and fending for ourselves and not, relying on governments to provide or to conduct themselves in a way that we feel more appropriate, if we just didn't rely on that at all, I think that we would be a lot happier species of people. I think we would do a lot more for each other, and therefore we would have a little bit more symbiotic kind of relationship happening. But greed kind of kicks in and advantages start being taken of and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we could survive as a species, but I think it's a difficult road to go down as far as that goes. And I think population, like growing population, is going to be difficult to deal with if you don't have like, centered, love, caring kind of position that you're taking on it. If you are more about like, if you're more about like greed and taking from everybody and taking advantage and stuff like that, if that kind of mindset is out there, it's going to be very difficult for people to live in that symbiotic kind of relationship. But if you are understanding and respectful of the people around you and self-preserving for, yourself in that same sense, then, I think that we can survive. I think everybody could survive as that. Anyway, moving on. Okay. Isn't there actually a declining birth rate? Yes, there is. And you can find that happening, in places like China and Japan where like the demographics issue is really kicking in. Take a look at some of the articles where they talk about in Japan, they sell more adult diapers than they do baby diapers. All right. Did I not see my buddy All-Nighter? Right on. Don't forget the magazines to keep the firearms fed with freedom seeds. Okay. Let's see here. Sinold, is that right? $5. Thank you so much. Thanks for the content with zero sept and some savings. Oh, zero debt. That's what it is. With zero debt and some savings. What's your advice to do with your money right now? Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I don't know what you guys should do with your money. I'm telling you what I do with my money, and you have to look at your position, where it is in your life, what it is that you want for the future, and how long you plan on being around for, and that's where you need to put your money, is where you feel safest with it. I personally right now am getting into a cash position. I'm trying to accumulate as much cash as I can. I bought a little bit of silver, but silver is probably going to end up going down in price, but not so much in like the premiums. People are going to want that product. I think gold is going to be a little bit better performer. but it's not, I don't think it's actually going to go up in price as much as people are probably anticipating um, in the short run. I think in the long run, gold is going to be a very good position to be in. Silver too, but I mean, we're just talking like this short term right now. And I think really mainly because I think most people are going to try to get into cash positions. I think that's where everybody's going to want to go to. And if it's a matter of selling off their crypto, selling off stocks, selling off gold and silver and land or whatever it is that they have in order to acquire that cash position, I think that's probably where people are going to go to over the short term. Now, when I mean short term, like next 6 months to a year, kind of thing. Um, at that point, like I'm gonna jump back into the game. Like, I'm keeping my eye on cryptocurrencies, watching them fall dramatically. I think that's probably going to be a place where you could probably get a very good return once everything kind of like chills out and people stop getting into like that cash position, but actually want to start trying to invest again. I think cryptocurrencies are going to do very well. There's so much media talk, so much stuff going on with the cryptocurrencies nowadays that it's just like it's almost impossible to believe that they're not going to do anything but just continue to do very well going into the many decades into the future. But yeah, as far as right now, I'm in cash. I'm into cash. Like cash is the only place that I even remotely feel safe. And a lot of people ask if it's cash in hand or cash in the bank. I keep it in the bank. Right now, I'm not worried about bank runs or bank closures or shutdowns. There's a lot of other YouTubers out there who put these great like clickbaity titles that get your money out of the bank now or something like that. I think it's reasonable to have some cash on hand for emergencies just in case something like that does happen. But, the chances of us having like a major bank run where you can't go down and get your money, that's probably very low on my concern level. And then also, like, I keep money in different banks, like in different bank accounts, so that if any one bank just whatever for some reason doesn't want to operate that day, or I can't fire up the app or whatever it is, and I have another source of being able to get some funding. So I use several banks. I do keep money in as far as like, that's what I'm kind of positioning towards. But after that, we'll have to see where we're at because it won't be long. Like once I see that cash is topped out and we are at the bottom of the market, I am going to get out of all the cash I have like as fast as I can. And I'll let you know when I do that. But as of right now, I'm accumulating cash. All right. Oop, there was another one right there. Thank you, Daniel, for the $2. You are a Gregory Peck look-alike. Yeah, thanks. I hear that quite a bit. So I actually had to look up Gregory Peck to see what he looked like, and I do agree. Let's see. Have you thought about Bitcoin miners? No. I'm just not that tech savvy. So like I talked with a buddy of mine who was really big into computer techie stuff, and I was like, hey man, let's set me up with like a crypto miner or something like that. And we just never really got into it. And I don't know what I'm doing with it anyway. Like, my entire channel, everything that I do off of a cell phone. I am like I am not the techie kind of guy. Um oh yeah, he does look like Gregory Peck. Okay. Never thought of that. But you guys are just going off about Gregory Peck. Okay. Do you believe in central banking? I'm kind of agnostic on that stuff. I believe in multiple currencies. Like, I would love it if I could go down to a store and have my choice of using silver or Bitcoin or cash or whatever I want. So I believe in competing currencies. I think the idea, like the idea of central banking and what their intended purpose is not necessarily like a bad thing, but the fact that it never seems to operate in a fashion that is truly benefiting to the people, but more benefiting to those who understand the system and they can prosper in a fashion that is far beyond anybody else. I don't think that's good. But it's really that's more of like the individual's fault and not the central banking's fault. Um, I do have to blame a lot on our educational system for not even remotely coming close to trying to teach anybody about this stuff. So if you don't take the initiative to learn it on your own, then you're going to get damaged by it. But if you understand what the central banking system is, how it operates, and the monetary policies that they use, really understanding it could probably give you a position that you can take advantage of that other people can't. So therefore, it's actually benefiting you too, to understand it. So I'm like I said, I mean, I could take it or leave it. In the end, I think the idea behind the central banking systems are legit, but they don't. Nobody, they just don't operate in that fashion. They just don't do it. People get richer and poorer get poorer. All right. Slick Forward. Thank you for the 4.99, man. Really appreciate it. Okay. Central banking is run by the small hats. Yeah. Love the dice. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, those dice are fun. Hit the like button because UE is always right. I don't know if I'm always right, but I always have an opinion, and you guys give me a lot of support here, and I try to come out with true, authentic thoughts and ideas that I'm finding out there as far as economics go. A lot of people they just kind of follow the herd out there and follow the mainstream medias and just listen to what everybody else is saying and try and copy that stuff. I don't. I mean, I really come up with what I feel is my own thoughts on this stuff. Something that is a little different from everybody else's, but it's what I see from, being in the working class position that I am in. It's different. I mean, most of the economists out there, they have this, like George Gammon says, a 30,000-foot view. They're looking down on everything. And, I'm one of the few guys who are standing on the ground looking up, and trying to see this stuff. And it's a very much different view that we see as opposed to what other people are seeing out there. Man, this is amazing. 872 of you. I thought I saw 900 at one point. That is awesome. I don't think I've ever had so many. All right, Johnny Boy Silver, thank you for the $5. Hi, Simon. Are you planning to get back into theater? I really would love to do that. I would love to do that again. That was such an amazing experience that I had doing that play, the rehearsals, and then the experience of actually doing one of the shows before COVID lockdown closed the theater down. But man, what an incredible experience that was. And I tell you, I knew that it was going to take a lot of commitment to do that, and I was prepared for it, and I did it. But trying to think that you're going to commit yourself to something like that again is a little it's a little bit overwhelming, because I knew it was going to be a lot. I wasn't quite prepared for it. Once it happened, I was cool with it. It all happened. But I mean, we were talking rehearsals every night for 2 or 3 hours for months, to get this thing done. But it was worth it. It was so worth it. I mean, yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Number guy in the finance space, not just about finance. All right. Let's see. Walked in Asian market yesterday. I go a few times a month, but foot traffic is only 30% of normal, and 10% off of everything signs never happen. I guess consumers are rejecting high prices. It's gonna happen. I mean, when after I upload this video, go and take a look at the links that I share down in the description, and go and watch George Gammon's video on stagflation. It was really good. I mean, he's talking about the jobs and the wages and how that's up right now, and there's plenty of it, but the economic activity is slowing down dramatically, and this is going to create a problem. All right. Biden's trying to make it $10. What is he trying to make? I don't see. That's the thing about this. All these politicians and all the crap that's going on is if you keep blaming them, then they're going to keep that power. You know what I'm saying? If you point the finger and say it's your fault, then you're going to give them more power to do something, right? To try and fix whatever problem it is. So you just got to you know what? You guys don't matter anymore. I'm not paying attention to you anymore. You just don't make any difference, and you take that power away from them. That's really where we need to be. We need to make government irrelevant. That's what we need to do. And I mean, I'm of the libertarian mindset. I'm very close to the anarchist kind of mindset of we don't need government. We can really govern ourselves. And I think in the day of cryptocurrencies with smart contracts and stuff like that that's coming into the future, I'm getting to the point where I'm pretty sure that we can make government irrelevant. We can get them down to just a handful of real specific duties that they need to do and nothing else outside of that, and we can handle the rest of it. And that's really the way I feel. All right, Juan, thank you so much for the $9.99. If you had the money, would you go to school for economics or work construction and earn good money? I want to make money now, but I love learning about the economy. Well, here's the wonderful thing about learning is that you don't need somebody else to teach you. You can do it on your own. And this day of internet, there is nothing out there that you can't learn on your own. I mean, believe me, you guys watch me stumble through this chapter. I mean, I am not a good reader at all. And I spend 2-3 hours, sometimes even more, every single day studying this stuff so that I can understand how it is that I need to conduct my life. I have an average job, right? I come out here, I entertain on YouTube, so I have a nice side gig going on. But really, I could do the same thing with 2 full-time jobs. Yeah, 2 full-time jobs takes up a lot of time. It takes, it isn't exactly the funnest way to go about things, but if you had 2 full-time jobs, you could save a lot of money. You could save a lot of money up and you could invest that and you could retire very fat and happy. Most people won't go that way. Now, back to the question about me as far as studying economics, if I studied economics, went and got a degree in economics, then I would have to use that degree to get a job like in finance, like being a banker or being a financial advisor or doing something of that kind of caliber. And that way you can use that degree to actually earn you a better income. But I mean, to be honest, I know a lot of people, they laugh when they hear this, but I actually really enjoy working retail. I mean, it's funny to say that, but I do. I enjoy the customers that come into the place that I work. I enjoy helping them with their projects, with the sales that I do. I mean, it's a fun job. It really is. It doesn't pay some awesome wage or something like you could get if you were a financial advisor. That's true. But I get a lot of knowledge from working from the retail end of things, and especially working at a hardware store and lumber yard. I get a whole lot of knowledge about building industries and distribution networks and all kinds of stuff. I apply that to my economic knowledge. Then I come out here and I entertain on YouTube, and actually I can make some pretty decent money. About as much money, I guess, if I was to have probably a regular job working, in finance or something like that with a degree in economics. My life is a whole lot easier and less stressful working retail and making videos than it would be if I was working as a financial advisor for somebody. So, I mean, I like the idea of it. It would be cool to go to school, get this, to get this knowledge in economics, and maybe get a degree that I could say, hey, look, I proved myself that I could do this. I think that would be kind of fun to do. But as far as a need for that to try and gear my life in a different direction, I don't see the need for it. You can learn about as much as you need to about economics for free on the internet. But thank you, Juan. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the $9.99. All right. Wow, so many of you. 847 people up in the chat. This is so awesome. Okay. A degree is nothing more than a receipt for an institution of higher learning. Yep. I love when they spell it college student. Let's see here. New buildings on the bus route. They will soon start sucking everyone out of their hinterlands. Oh, interesting. What kind of silver do you purchase? Okay, that's a good question. For the longest time, I would purchase generic silver rounds, whatever generic silver mint, whatever I could find. Most of the time you got the best premiums on those, so they're very low premium. After I had accumulated a bunch of those, I started moving more into the government issued stuff, like the American Silver Eagles or Canadian Maple Leafs. Those type of government issues, they generally carry a higher premium, but on the flip side of that, they also are a little bit easier to sell and get a little bit better premium for them when you sell them. They're recognizable, so you get a lot less question on whether or not they're authentic. as far as real silver. So I moved into a bunch of like government silver for a while. And then after I had accumulated that, I thought, well, I got 1 ounce rounds. What else, So I started collecting like 10-ounce bars. So that's kind of how I went about it. And then also junk silver. I got a nice stash of junk silver, just dimes and quarters. And I thought those would be a good bartering tool because, like, what if silver goes to like $100 or $500 an ounce and you just want like, $20 worth of it or, $50 worth of it? If you have smaller units like dimes and quarters, silver dimes and quarters, that would be a lot easier to trade than it would be to try and like, say break off a piece of a silver ounce or something like that. All right, malls turn to apartment condos from big deep pockets. Yeah, that's what I hear they're going to do with the Lloyd Center. Let's turn it into apartments. Do you think the dollar will surpass the euro? Yeah, I think the dollar is going to rule overall at some point. But not for long, but it will. And I think it will cross the euro as well. Do you think government exasperates the wealth divide? Well, I don't think they make it any easier. And I think a lot of the stuff that they do as far as like help goes doesn't really help. It only makes things worse, like trying to make homes affordable or something like that. I love it when the Fed says we need to, support households and businesses, right? Support households and businesses by offering them debt. Like, here's your debt, and this is help. So that's what ends up happening. I mean, I guess to make that question, wealthy people don't have debt. They have assets and no debt. And the debt that they do have is productive debt, meaning that they'll take out a loan, buy something that's going to pay them more than what the loan costs. So that's how wealthy people operate. I mean, if they do have debt, it's productive debt. And they don't have unproductive debt, they have assets. So that's probably where, like, most people are just like end up having so much damage in their life, it's because they end up buying like an expensive car that's unproductive debt, and they end up spending like all this time trying to come up with the money to pay for this damn car. It's like luxury, right? Going into luxury. All right. Let's see, I thought I saw something up there that was a good question. Did I miss that? Alright, let's go down to the bottom here. The common man stacking sats is feared by the elites. Stacking what, Satoshis kind of thing? Lots of laughs. Raindrops on my roof matching Simon's. Yeah, it's raining pretty good earlier. Can you make $1,000 a day on YouTube? Well, I'm sure somebody can, and I mean, I had that one video a long time ago that has like 300 and something thousand views. That one got up to $1,000. That was pretty cool. But no, I mean, I don't. I mean, people do out there, but I don't make that much money off of my videos. I mean, sometimes, like, if I could get 300,000 views, I might be able to. Alright, in my area, I see house prices adjusting down. Anyone notice this? I have seen some price reductions taking place, but not like significant. Like they, I mean, what I mean by that is like, here I saw this house that was selling for $350,000, or would have sold for $350,000 like a year or two ago. Now they have it at $470 and they dropped it $20,000. So like, yeah, it's price reduction, but it's off of still like stupid high prices. So I don't like, they reduced it to like insanely high prices from stupid high prices. That's kind of the reductions that I'm seeing. I'm looking for the reductions where it's like back to normal, like normal-ish, like prices, 20-30% drop in prices. That to me would take us back to something that would be like reasonably normal or normal-ish in a sense of like housing downturn. I'm not trying to predict like what I think housing is going to downturn to. In fact, right now, I think housing, considering that there's going to be a slowdown in the building industry, like as far as new construction goes, I'm thinking that house prices themselves might stay elevated through that for a while. A lot of people are talking about a wave of foreclosures coming. I just don't see it. Like, why would you let a house foreclose on it unless you were just like, just completely out of luck, or just gave up altogether? Like, why would you let a house foreclose on when you could just sell it? Even if you were to sell it for a loss or short sell it, at least it wouldn't be as bad as a foreclosure goes. But I guess that wave of foreclosures, I guess it's still possible, but I just don't see it happening now. And I also think about like interest rates. Like, that's going to be the key thing to building up an inventory level of homes, is that whether or not the interest rates on mortgages is going to continue to elevate and go incredibly high. Like, if they double interest rates from here, what if you get up 12, 15% on a mortgage, 18% on a mortgage? Is that possible? Well, you'd have to think, how many mortgages are actually going to be occurring during that time? Like, how many people are actually going to take out a 15 to 18% mortgage on a house? There's some people who probably will. I don't doubt it. And if the price of the home has dropped significantly, then you could probably afford those payments as well. But I have a feeling that because interest rates have been so low for so long, that the demand for anything that has a return on it, like anything that has a yield that is considered somewhat safe, like, I know mortgages were a real pain, like during the Great Financial Crisis, but for the most part, most people make their mortgage payment, like, for the most part. And so, like, mortgage-backed securities are somewhat of a safe investment. They weren't during the Great Financial Crisis because they were full of toxic assets, but for the most part, most mortgage-backed securities are fairly safe. And so if you have investors out there who are looking for a return on their investment, looking for any kind of yield, well, then they would probably find it in mortgage-backed securities as the interest rates begin to rise. And if they rise to a significant level, then you're going to have investors pouring into those mortgage-backed securities, and that'll probably keep the prices elevated on them and the yields fairly low. Now, that's if you can find investors who are willing to take on that kind of risk. Whether that happens or not, that's going to be another story. But, interest rates are low, and there's a demand for, return on investment. So who knows? The Fed could step completely away from it and have, like, just the investors taken over as far as the purchasing of those mortgage-backed securities. And if there's less homes being sold and being refinanced, then there's going to be less mortgage-backed securities to even have on the market to begin with. So, yeah, time will tell. Time will tell whether or not that's going to happen. Wow, lots of comments. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go back and read all these. Okay, let's see here. You're buying a house at the top of a crash. Supposedly. We'll find out. And that's the other thing. Like, I'm not worried about a downturn on the price. Like, because when I bought my damn house, they made me put so much down payment on it. And then the price has gone up, like the value of the house has gone up like insanely high, just even in the 5 months that I purchased it, that even if, a 20% downturn on that house still wouldn't have me underwater on it. And so I'm not even really that concerned about it at all, even if it was to go 50%. It's the place that I live, and it's, there's no place else to live. Even if I was to rent an apartment, a single bedroom apartment here in Astoria is $1,800 a month. It's not much cheaper than the house payment is. So. All right. Let's see here. Need room to. Got 2 dogs. Want kids. Yeah. That's the problem. That's one of the reasons why I could not find a house to rent, is because I had a dog, and nobody wanted to rent to me when I had a dog. People who can still afford an apartment are doing okay. My home is up over $75,000 in 2 years. I know because the house next to me just sold. BlackRock will enjoy the crash. Well, and that's the other thing you got to think about. Like, 30% of homes right now are being sold to all cash buyers. 30%. They don't care where interest rates go. And they're willing to pay at this price. So that really, like, how far can it go down when you have 30% people who are buying cash right now? And like houses don't still, like in some areas, don't sit on the market for minutes. I mean, they sell right away. So like when that flips, I mean, it's happening now. It is turning. You're finding stories of it taking place all over. That the housing market is obviously churning. You know, that there is obviously something happening here that is not what it once was. But is it the actual beginning of a crash, or is it just a stalling, considering the things that we have talked about here? I mean, I think probably the biggest thing to watch is the mortgage-backed securities and the inventory levels. If the mortgage-backed security market, that's where like interest rates are going to go. Like, can they find a buyer? Right? When the Federal Reserve starts to unwind their balance sheet, starts to get out of these mortgage-backed securities, is there going to be a buyer out there of those mortgage-backed securities? And of them, how many are actually going to be coming on the market if there's less mortgages being written? So that's, I mean, you got to consider all this stuff, you know? Let's see. Don't apologize. You and the family enjoy your home. Is priceless. Yeah, we do enjoy the home, and it is a nice neighborhood. It's in the neighborhood I wanted to be in. I mean, other than the damn price of it, it's actually a really nice, I'm really enjoying it. It's a good house. There's nothing hateful or spiteful to say it's a bad idea to buy a house. It's just what it is, what it is. No, I agree with you, Don. I appreciate you, John Inslee. Okay, let's see. Okay, all-nighter. So glad I built my tiny home for less than $6,000 and I'm rent-free in San Diego. That's perfect. All right, we need a crash and everything. People will still buy a home with high rates, just a smaller home and less preferred location. Yep. Renting is terrible. Grats on the new home. I don't think renting is terrible. I think it's the way you look at it and how you deal with the renting that you're doing. You know, I mean, when I was trying to buy a house the first time, it drove me deep into debt and it took me forever to recover from it. When I was renting a house, I had zero liabilities and 100% assets, and I was doing quite well. I could pay any bill on demand. I could go on vacations. I could do whatever I wanted. I had a lot of money from it, right? Because I didn't have any liabilities. I had 30 days of liability. That was it. At the end of 30 days, I had my freedom. Right? I could do whatever I wanted to. Yes, it was throwing money away, right? But it wasn't throwing money away if you are considering yourself buying freedom. And that's exactly what I was thinking. In order to get into this house was a much different story. It took everything out of me to get there, right? But it's true. Now I have an asset that I am buying. It is going up in value. I mean, there's, like, if I could sell it now for the Zillow estimate, I'd be making a bunch of money off of it. There's very little doubt in my mind that buying a house can be a great way to invest your money and to earn a decent amount when you go to sell it later on in life. There's no doubt about that. But when you consider the idea of holding on to nothing but assets and no liabilities whatsoever, you can invest all your money and buy a house outright and not have to lose any of that money to interest. Even at 3% interest from 6 months ago, by the time you're done paying for a house, you will have spent probably double the amount or not double, but a significant amount of money that was just wasted to interest payments. So is it still, a good investment if you like wasted all that money to interest payments? I mean, yeah, you might get a lot of it back when you sell it, but nobody ever considers that. They say, I bought a house for $250,000. I just sold it for $500,000. But how much did you pay making interest payments? Maintenance, taxes, all that stuff. I mean, nobody considers any of that stuff when they go and talk about how much they sold it for. They just talk about the price that they paid for it and the price that they sold it for, but they don't talk about anything in between, But I am very happy with my house, and I'm glad I'm there. When do you think max pain will be? I'm thinking December 2022 through March of 2023. I don't know. I mean, I think that's probably going to be different for everybody, but I'm guessing that once the Federal Reserve hits about 1.5% on the Fed funds level, give it about 6 months after that, and you're going to see the serious pain. The max pain is going to come 6 months after, or so, 3 months or so after they decide that they're going to turn interest rates around and start easing again. And so for that point right there, that's where you're going to see max pain. You know, I don't know. It depends on what position you're in, I guess. Yeah, property tax is the canary in the coal mine, continually creeping up. Yeah. Cash is crash in housing October 2022 or sooner. What percentage of your income is housing? What percentage of my income, like my total income, or just my like day job income? As it's I don't know, between my wife and I, my day job income, it's like, I don't know, 25% maybe, I guess. 30. Where do you see lumber bottom? I can't imagine lumber getting much below, like, say, the five to 600 per thousand. I think somewhere around 600 to 700 per thousand is probably where the mills could probably still be fairly profitable, and there would be a lot of demand at that same time. So I think that's because, like, you can price a 2x4 at $20 a piece. It doesn't matter what you price them for. It's a matter of how many you're going to actually turn over, how many you're going to actually sell. So it's not so much like where the price is, but like at what price is it going to start flowing through the system? Is it going to start, are you going to be able to start moving inventory again? I think that 700 per thousand would probably have a lot of lumber moving. People would be able to buy it, in a reasonable price. And I mean, not like it used to be, but I mean, at least comparatively today. And if transportation wasn't such a problem like it is now, I think the mills would be fairly profitable at that stage as well, or could be fairly profitable at that stage. You can think like 1,000 per thousand, mills would make a lot of money, but if they're not selling a lot of lumber, then what difference does it make what they have it priced at? You need to be able to sell a lot of it and then have it at the right price. Okay. I owned a lot. Now I just own precious metal, pew-pews, and candy for the pew-pew. Basically, yeah. All right. Stock market about to crash. Too many delusional people. Look at places where the Asian money is in real estate. All right. Let's get down here to the bottom. Okay, what is your plan right now? Basically, just stay steady, relax. Talking to Johnny is okay. I like your YouTube from Japan. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, hello, Japan. Is it a good time to live in a cardboard box, or should I save more money? Save more money. I think you are a retired financier, Don Juan. All right. Hi from Iowa. Well, hello, Iowa. Just a small reminder, we can't take any of our stuff with us, so don't worry if you have too much. Yeah, hello from Romania. Iowa here too. Right on. Silver at $20.46. Yeah, it took a drop in there. No crash in housing. Why panic? Try a few things. Let's see. I'm just saying, when you rent, you don't get a $3,000 bill every year, or host makes a good point. Our host makes a good point. Thank you, Matthew. All right. Everybody from Iowa. All right. Don't worship false idols. Yeah, good time to buy silver then. Yeah, if you can find it. I mean, if you can find it and the premiums aren't so crazy. I mean, that's the problem that I'm finding with silver right now, is that the premiums are just nuts. I remember getting silver for 35 cents over spot price. And I thought even then it was just like, wow, that's pretty good, I guess, right? 35 cents, I mean, I'd rather get it for spot price, but 35 cents. Now it's like, I mean, $5 at the bare minimum. I mean, I hear that, some places are like 10, 12, $15 over spot price. I mean, holy moly, I can't believe it even sells for that much. But then again, I did just buy a 10-ounce bar not too long ago for a fairly decent amount over spot. But, I want to keep stacking. And when you dollar cost average, it doesn't really matter how much you pay for an individual. And I mean, obviously, you don't want to buy all your silver at expensive pricing, but when you dollar cost average, at some point, it's more about like how much you have and not necessarily how much you paid for it, because it all comes out in an average in the end. So if you purchased a lot, when it was really cheap, buying a little bit now just to keep adding to your stack isn't necessarily a bad deal. It's the dollar cost averaging. Sure, it raises your average up, on what you paid for, but then again, you're also accumulating silver again as opposed to waiting for a cheaper price. Okay. Silver at 20 per ounce. Let's see here. I bought a ton of junk at 50 cents over spot. That's a good price. I think silver is a wise move. I do too. I think silver is a very wise move. Yeah, people love accumulating stuff. When we're all going to die, I'd rather spend money on experiences and travel. I agree with you. I don't think that you should dump 100% of everything you have into saving, like, for an event that never happens. I mean, it's one thing to have an emergency fund. It's one thing to have decent investments so that you can have a decent retirement from it. But it's another thing to postpone everything enjoyable in your life so that you can accumulate a bunch of money and then die never having once ever enjoyed it. I mean, what was the point of that? There is none. So enjoying life every day, like, you know, you got to enjoy it. I mean, what's the point of it all if you're not enjoying it? So, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, like, dump all my money into experiences and happiness every single day. I mean, that's, like, not the smartest move. But to deny yourself everything in your entire life that would be enjoyable so that you can try and save for the future for an event that may never come, I don't think that's the smartest move. So. I mean, it could be, but you're just like, I mean, wouldn't you rather enjoy your life, All right, there was a super chat up there. Kato Sista, thank you so much. Sending a coffee and some sun from the East Coast. Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel better that 20,000 in 1990 was 43,000. Half the worth for double the work. Maybe in the short term, but a long-term investment to be decided. Yeah, I'm not sure what that one was towards. Don't forget your underwear. Oh, it's probably a wise move. Let's see here. Bucks RC World says, my wife and I have now started to go to concerts, and since the pandemic took that away, and we saw it as, yep, these people might not be here forever if something happens like this again. Yeah. Yeah, let's see here. I told my kids don't sell my silver until they're selling it to Sony and Samsung and Apple. Yeah, by the time it gets to that point, when they're demanding, like, people bring them their silver, you're going to be getting a good price for it, I'm sure. What are your thoughts on tech? On tech, like tech stocks kind of thing, or tech in general? I'm not much into investment advice, especially in companies that I'm not particularly aware of or understand. When it comes to like technology and just like the advancements of that going into the future, I see like a lot of automation happening, and I honestly see this, like, a lot of people look at the automation as like a way, or it's going to end up taking like a lot of jobs and people's employment away. and people aren't going to have anything to do. And I totally disagree with that. Like, I disagree that technology destroys employment or will destroy society because it takes away employment or something like that. I just don't see it that way. If anything else, technology frees up people so that they can go and pursue the things that they truly should be doing with their life. And I mean, I've said this many times, as far as relating it to back when, we had the phone operators, where there was like warehouses of like women sitting in front of these switchboards, pulling wires and sticking them in, and just like going crazy like that. And this is what they did like all day long. And then they switched it over, and they didn't need, people pulling wires and putting them in the appropriate connections. Once they took that away, people were like, oh man, all these women are going to be employed. What are they going to do? They're going to be all this hard times and stuff. And yeah, that might have been the case when it first happened, as when they first initially lost their job. But it freed them up to do what they really should have been doing with their life. I mean, there's no advancements for growth when you're working as a telephone operator in such fashions, right? At these switchboard operators. But when you're freed up to do what you truly want to do with your life, well, now you can possibly go and pursue a career. And that's really what happened. I mean, you think about it, right after this, switching, moving to where like you can't have like this mundane job working here at this warehouse anymore. You got to go and find something else to do. What do they end up doing? Well, they went to school and they became doctors and lawyers and politicians, and like they did stuff really, really grand with their life. And the daughters of these women, they saw that happen too. And so now this is where you're coming into finding that like more women are getting degrees now than men are. And this is like, it's like a switching of what's happening here, as far as like, what happens when technology comes into a society. Like, if you bring in technology into a society, it's going to free people up to do what they really should have been doing with their life, instead of like whatever it was that they were doing. I don't know if I explained that right, but anyhow. Let's see, how long have we been out here? An hour and a half. Right on. Let's see here. Here in the UK, we pay 20% tax on silver, so it's hard to be that enthused about it, and gold feels a much better store of value. Yeah, man, 20% tax on silver. That's incredible. Do you think food will be short supply in the U.S.? Yes, I do. I think food is going to come up in a very short supply. I think that if there's anything that you should do as far as protecting yourself from that is to figure out about canning, figure out about, how it is that you can secure food that you can. The idea that you're going to store food, like store an abundance of food, that's like, you can certainly do that. But if you have to bail, like what if you have to leave? Then you can't really take all that food with you. If you have canning supplies, like really, you just need like, a handful of jars, lids, and rings. Yeah, it's not exactly something that's ideal to pack around with you, but if you have that kind of equipment, then when you do come into food, you can preserve it, like right now. That's a very good skill to have. So I think that's probably going to be the most important thing to do if you're worried about the food coming into the future. And really, it's not going to be a bad deal for like the rich. They're going to have plenty of food, because it's not like there's going to be no food. It's just going to be super expensive, and that's where like it's going to feel like there's no food. So that's what I would do if you're concerned about the food shortage, is to gain skills in canning, to learn that, and then maybe get a job at a grocery store or a restaurant, like a really good restaurant. Go to where the food is and work for those people. We've been having recessions and industrial revolutions, but we're about to have a spiritual recession. God help me quit drinking 12 years ago. Well, that is super awesome, Zorn76. I quit drinking about 6 years ago myself, and it was tough. Life doesn't really get much better when you first quit, but man, does it not change and get better over time. And I look back 6 years ago, and I am so glad I gave it up when I did and struggled through everything that I had to struggle through to stay sober. Man, it's totally benefiting my life now. But at the time, it was very tough, and it didn't seem to be any much of a benefit at the time. You just kind of struggle through things. But yeah, quitting drinking is it's a wonderful experience. Especially if you're a heavy drinker like I was. All right. What will happen to housing market bubble? I don't know. We keep kind of guessing on what's going to happen with housing. I mean, we just don't know, right? I mean, if anything, I think everybody should prepare themselves, at least mentally, if not financially, for at least a 20 to 25% downturn in the market. I mean, I would just at least prepare for it. I mean, to think about that. Whether it happens or not, that's going to be, time will tell. I mean, it's just going to be, there's just so many factors that go into it. I mean, especially with some of the things that I think about with like the Federal Reserve and the mortgage-backed securities, and then the less issuance of those mortgage-backed securities, investors diving into them because they have a yield, like how far can it go? Like, eventually the free market is just not going to allow the interest rates to go any higher than they do. If it's available, like, if the money is there to be lent, if the confidence is there from the investors, that's the thing that we have to look for. Jaws, so awesome, $9.99, you are the best. Just snuck in for this. I was outside organizing a wild black raspberry patch, right on, area I have on my property. Going to start making jams and canning this season. Thanks for the inspiration, UE. Well, that is so awesome. And canning berries is a great way to get started, as far as canning goes. Very simple. You can use water baths to do most of the canning on that. It's when you get into like cooking meats that you need to do the pressure cooking, where it's a little bit more complicated. It's still not that difficult, but it's a little bit more into it. But starting off canning with berries is a great way to go, especially the acidic stuff like berries and tomatoes, things like that, the fruits. All right, quitting drinking is very positive move and to be applauded. Well, thank you. Yeah, it made all the difference in my life. I'm not saying that you can't do it. But people like me, I never would have ever even come close to accomplishing the levels of things that I have done, even though I feel like really I'm just kind of getting started. But I know I never would have made it to even this part of my life had I continued drinking. It wouldn't have happened. It just simply would not have happened. So I know a lot of people, they can experience life with no problems at all, with using alcohol even on a daily basis. I could not. It was not going to work for me. And had I not given it up, I would not have been here. It just wouldn't have happened. So. All right. Oh, did I miss a super chat there? I got Jaws. Sorry if I missed a super chat. I apologize. I don't see it there though. That was the last one. Alrighty, back down to the bottom here. Sorry guys, I'm gonna move down. Comments. No alcohols or drugs. Great job. Yeah. What kind of chain do you wear? Oh, this guy right here. It's I don't know where it's from. I think Italy or something like that. But I bought it from a friend of mine who was kind of hurting for cash, and so I said, "Well, I'll give you, spot price for it." So we weighed it out, and it's a little over 2 ounces. So I think I paid like, I don't know, $35, $40, something like that. I think it was just under $40 that I had paid for it. But yeah, it's a silver chain, and gosh, I've been wearing it for 12 years or something. Alright. Oops. Tuna, how much? I don't know how much tuna's selling for right now. I should find out, because that's a great way. Like, we've done that before too, like these boats, because they tuna fish right out here, and they're constantly bringing them in. Well, not constantly, but when they do bring them in, you can go right down to the boat and buy whole fish. Like you can just like they'll sell you like these whole fish. You go down there and you get them really cheap, and then you can go home and can that up, and you'll have like all the canned tuna you want. You don't have to go to the store and buy it. And there is people who like when the season comes around, the tuna canning season, there'll be like these canning parties where they'll go and buy like 100 fish, and there'll be like 12 women, and they'll be spending all day like just cutting and packing and cooking and canning all day long. And it's no joke. I mean, it's a serious thing. All right. Jenny's Comic Life. Thank you for the $10. Very cool. I've been collecting comics and collectibles for 3 years. I spent almost $12,000. Guess I'm just waiting for a booth at a con. I see I can spend $20 on a book or a toy to sell for more. Yeah, if you see your market, and that's the other thing. Like, everybody has their unique perspectives and their observations. Like, a buddy of mine, he used to flip cars. Like he would be, it just amazed me, like watching him do it too, because he would flip all kinds of stuff. But cars was like, he really liked messing with those cars. And, he would go and find these people who had these cars that weren't running right, or there was just like, they just didn't look that good or something. And he would see the value and he'd be like, no, man, I can get some money out of this thing. And he would give them like these really good deals on, or he would get a really good deal on them. Fix them, change the plugs around or something, polish them up, like, clean them up really good, like spend a day or an afternoon just detailing the heck out of it. And then he would make like, $1,000 on these things. And I would watch him do this like, 2-3 times a month sometimes. And I was like, man, you are just like killer at this. So, but he was really good. He understood the market. He understood what he saw and how he could flip these items. And, that's the thing. Everybody sees things differently. Everybody sees their unique markets that they can be in. I know another guy who did the same thing with firearms. Like he was really big into selling firearms. And here in Oregon, up until I don't know, about 5 years ago or so, like the transferring of firearms between private parties was not a big deal. There was no like crazy like laws or anything about it, and you could just like, especially when it was just like something like an old shotgun or something like that Grandpa had that he used to take out their duck hunter or something. Those type of firearm transactions and stuff, like nobody cared. And so it was really easy to do sales of firearms like a long time ago, but things have changed quite a bit. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about something else. Oh, there was another one up there. Jenny's. Okay, you mean ask IT, God is not a male. Okay. Let's see. Dawn is all up in here. What did it? Just got to step out of the way. Let me see. Okay. Thanks for chatting. Be safe. John Inslee. Yeah. You guys had a good conversation, did you? All right. Protect the Second Amendment. Yeah, I am a big believer in the constitutional rights, and that's something that I feel like is another thing that a lot of people miss here, nowadays, is that they don't understand quite what their rights are, or they confuse what rights and privileges are. Once you kind of understand your constitutional rights, you just behave differently. Like you don't think of the government as some kind of like entity that's there to protect you or save you. They're just more to basically protect the idea of doing commerce between states and to protect you from like foreign powers or something like that. But for the most part, government really shouldn't be involved in anything that you do. I mean, at all. And once you kind of learn your constitutional rights, like the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, once you learn that stuff, I mean, you kind of look at government and you just look at everything a little differently. Like now, I won't even so much as cross the street if the sign doesn't say walk. And people are like, well, why not just jaywalk and there ain't nobody around? And it was just like, no, because I'm not going to give anybody even an attempt of an ability to come and take anything from me, even if it's information. Like, if I am not allowed to walk across the street and there's going to be an authority there that could possibly say, hey, You attempted to walk across the street. I need to know who you are. I want your name and number or whatever comes from it. I won't do it. I won't defy like anything like that in order to prevent that from happening. You see where I'm kind of getting at? Like, there will never be a time that I will purposefully put myself in a position in which that a police officer will come and talk to me. Never will I do that. Okay? And if they do, they're going to have to deal with somebody who's going to be like, well, am I committing a crime? Am I about to commit a crime? You know? Well, if not, and I'm not under arrest, then I would like to be free to go. You know? And if it continues on, then you're going to find somebody like me who's going to be like, well, the Fourth Amendment says that, that I'm allowed to, be private, right? And if they question that, then you can continue on with it. And you can say, all right, well, now we're going to start pursuing the idea that I'm going to defend my constitutional rights. And this is where it starts getting tricky, because you have a higher authority over anybody else, and your constitutional rights will prove that. And if you can go to somebody and you can say, no, the Fourth Amendment says the rights of the people to be secure in the person's houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. I would like you to show me the warrant. Right? When you have that kind of idea and knowledge behind you and backing it, well, pretty soon you don't have authority messing with you anymore. Right? But you can't put yourself in that position to have to do that. That's the key part, right? Is to never be there in the first place. All right, moving on. Hey, $5 from Space Bun. Thank you so much. Peace and love. Yes, absolutely. Share the peace and love. Remember, when you are centered and you are focused and you have positive energy within you, positive things will happen. If you are in fear, if you are negative, if you are in some sort of retaliation or just the fear in general idea, then what ends up happening is your energy moves to the extremities. You're in a fight or flight position. You will then start attracting negative things towards you, and you will never grow as a person. You must be centered, you must be at peace, and you must feel love within you and everything that you do. All right, you're getting bored. See ya, Mike. Yeah, I'm getting kind of bored too. How long have we been out here? An hour and a half, 46 minutes. What else you guys want to talk about? What other questions you have? You won't be able to produce anything, and you'll be strictly limited on what you can consume through the digital surveillance. Yeah, I can see something like that very much happening. The whole digital concept, I mean, that digital ledger and everything else that comes with it, it can be as scary as people think it is going to be. I mean, it will be. But that's the whole point, is that you have to understand it, that it is something that's going to be scary. It is coming, and you have to prepare yourself for that. I mean, you can fight it all you want. I mean, and we should. We probably should fight it as much as we can. But it's futile. It's not, in the end, it will take place. I mean, unless everybody decided that for tomorrow that they're just going to start transacting in gold and silver and Bitcoin and nothing else, then the digital currencies are going to come. I mean, it's just a matter of time, and it will be as bad as people think it is. But it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen like instantly. Like, a lot of people say, like, they're going to be able to just turn you off or, track you on everything you do and stuff like that. Yeah, that'll happen, but it's not going to happen for like a generation. Like, it's going to take a long time for that kind of like government intrusion to come to the cryptocurrencies. It's because at first they want people to use it. They want people to be confident. So they're going to let anybody do anything they want with it, and there won't be any kind of punishment or retaliation from it. Even like drug deals and black market deals and stuff like that. I would see where they would allow all that stuff to happen. Then once everybody is in and they have no other form of escape, then they'll start turning on the pressure. The problem is people shutting down regular talk. Yeah. Just like how the old school internet started out. Yeah, just like that. Like, a lot of people don't even realize that there's a dark web out there that is immensely bigger than the World Wide Web that we normally, like most people use. Like, if you're on Google, you have access to about 2% of what's really out there. Uh, let's see. It's funny how obvious it is, Jake. I guess Don's still talking to. Let's see here. Dark web is scary. Yeah, it is. It was amazing. Like the first time I had ever learned about Tor browser, and somebody was like, "Yeah, man, there's all kinds of stuff you can find out there on the internet." I'm like, "What in the world?" So I go and started searching on Tor browser, and like, yeah, man, there is a lot of stuff out there that you just will not find on Google. Yikes! I'm going to go have a coffee. Thanks. All right, honestly, we'll see ya. Jake says, yeah, about 10% of what we see is public web. 90% is dark web data. Let's see, someone, will there ever be a Google Dark? I doubt it. I doubt that any kind of institution like Google would ever allow like the ultimate of free and open source communications, stuff like that. I don't think so. Not Google. Tor is operated by the feds now. Yeah, and this is what Tor was invented by the Navy, wasn't it? Like, I'm pretty sure the military came up with Tor. But and I'm not positive on that either. But yeah, when I was first looking at it, like nobody had even really started talking about Tor yet, or even really knew about it. So it was a long time ago that I had seen it, and like I was gonna try and use it like on a regular basis just to be like super secure or something. But like things like YouTube don't work really well over the Tor browser. It's really slow and kind of cumbersome. So if you're like into watching videos like I was, then Tor wasn't the best way to go about it. Let's see here. Avoiding the Trudeau comments. No, I'm not avoiding them. I don't know where. I'm just blasting through, to usually going right to the bottom of the comments to see what's there. Do you think this inequality in society is a precursor to a revolution against Wall Street and Donald Trump? No. I mean, do you think inequality in society is a precursor to revolution against Wall Street and Donald Trump? I mean, it might be a precursor to a revolution, but I don't think it's necessarily against Donald Trump. I mean, or Wall Street for that matter. It's just, it's just part of the business cycle. Wall Street happens to be involved in it. Again, like what we read from Cantillon stuff, it's like these politicians make a bunch of noise and they spend a bunch of money, and it looks like they're part of the problem or the possible solution, but really they don't really have much of an impact on anything when it comes to the grand scheme of economics and society and stuff. Let me see here. What do they say? Like, I forget how he put it. Something like they just don't matter anymore or something. Anyway, no, I just don't see like a revolution against Wall Street or Trump. I mean, I see a revolution, but that's just kind of in general towards the government itself, but not necessarily to the Wall Street or the bankers. Like they're that just kind of essentially ends up consisting of a bunch of private bankers and money and people and stuff like that anyway. When you end up revolting, I mean, who are you going to go after? Wall Street? Are you going to start going after individuals and start attacking them? Or, I mean, when you at least go after government, you can go after like the institutions, the buildings, the stuff like that. Same thing, I guess, with Wall Street. You can attack the banks, and kind of vandalize those things up, but it's not like it does anything like remotely different. People need to change the way they are, right? I mean, you can't blame government. I mean, you can blame government just fine, but you also got to remember this is the government that you voted for, and so you got exactly what you asked for, and if you don't like it, then stop asking them to change things. I mean, you got exactly what you asked for, and like that's why I don't even care about politics or even care, because like I'm tired of all that. It's just like you keep asking them to fix this stuff and they just make it ever worse. I'm tired of asking them. They've done the best that they have done. They failed, right? They are not good at this at all. So I'm done asking them for anything. Like, I mean, I'm done with it. I just more of like a reaction to see what they think that they can do. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how to explain that, but I'm done with politics. I just don't care about it anymore. Let's see here. $2 for why gold is going down. It should be going up, right? People are getting into cash. People want cash. There is going to be like cash hungry people over the next 6 months to a year. It's going to be unreal, and the cash positions are going to grow. Everybody's going to want to get into cash. They're going to be worried about loss of everything, loss of real estate, loss of stocks, loss of bonds, loss of everything, and cash is going to be the only position that they know to go to. They should be going to gold. I mean, they really should be, and give it enough time and pain out there across the globe, and if enough people recognize that the United States is not the place to be, then gold is going to be the place they go to. So yeah, that's the reason why gold is going down right now. Gold and silver. You're going to find everything that can be sold, that can be liquidated, is going to get liquidated. I mean, at least while the concern of a major recession or crash is on, that's the way I see it going to be happening. But give it time. I mean, it's just a matter of people like figuring out that the United States is not a safe haven. But the only people who really think that are people here in the United States. And then some countries out there, like, you know, they kind of say it, you know, like they don't like the dollar, but then they borrow in dollars, you know. So they like the dollar too. Okay, wow, you are still live. I went and learned a whole new song in my electric guitar. Yeah, I'm about ready to bail out of here though, because I've been on for 2 hours now, and I'm kind of losing my voice, and I got to go meet up with a friend here in a little bit too. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do today. Okay, basically retreat from the cities, yeah. Just the meltdown reaction alongside wonderful. They're letting Musk be cool to lure people into Neuralink and transhumanism. Okay. The petrodollar is on its way out. Yeah, I don't think so. Not yet. I mean, it will be. Just, you know, I mean, the whole petrol idea, like using the dollar to back oil purchases or to require oil purchases in dollars, that whole hegemony thing could come to an end. And that's going to be very devastating for the United States. But I do have to question, is that actually going to happen? You know, they're trying to push the idea, Russia is, especially selling their energy in rubles, and then, you know, places like China getting on board with that, China and India. But you got to think, it's like the rest of the world. Like, is the rest of the world really going to take on another type of currency to compete with the dollar? And if they do, is that country or that nation or that currency, is it willing to do what the United States is willing to do? Which is something that is very dangerous position to be in, but it's also very rewarding in a sense for our standard of living. You know, you got to think, we provide the world with enough currency so that they can do transactions. There's no other nation like that. There's no other nation that's willing to provide the world with a currency of that magnitude. And then you would also have to have a debt market that's also of substantial magnitudes to provide the world with a safe and liquid asset, right? There's no other nation out there that's even comes remotely close to doing that. And if there was, like, it would be, I guess, China. And, like, are they going to be willing to quit exporting and become a net importer so that they can provide the world with their currency like the United States does? I doubt it. Like, they're trying to prevent that from happening now. Like, they're trying to prevent too much stuff from leaving their country, right? And causing their imports to grow too much, very much like the Cantillon effect. I mean, that's really why I think the lockdowns are happening, is they're trying to slow down their economy. They're trying to create an inflation. It's one reason why they're still locked down. I mean, the United States went through it to break down the supply chain so that they can get inflation, so that the Federal Reserve could raise the interest rates. I truly believe that, you know, that was the reason why they did it. And you just listen to him now. We're hoping that we can get help from the supply chain. It was just like, well, raising of interest rates to fix a broken supply chain doesn't sound like it's going to work. But that's what they're going to do, you know? Yeah. Oh, man, so many comments. You will own nothing and be happy. Buy your NFTs. Yeah, I'm still on the fence with the NFTs, but, you know, we'll learn more about those as they come. It just seems so ripe for fraud. All right. Do you have thoughts maybe on other metals than silver and gold, platinum, palladium, and copper? Well, copper would be an interesting one. I could see copper, possibly being a metal you would want to hold. And the main reason not palladium or platinum, not because I don't think that they're valuable metals or something like that. It's be more for the selling purposes of it. Like, how do you unload palladium? Like, I got an ounce of palladium. There's very few places that I could go to that it's going to give me money for palladium. Now, there is a few, like you can go to like pawn shops or coin stores, and you might find like somebody in your network who might be willing to give you the money for palladium. But it's not nearly as easy to sell palladium as it is to sell silver. So like you got an ounce of silver, there's a million places you can sell that thing. Like, it's all over. But palladium, not so much. So like silver, gold, copper, like I could see copper being something that people might want to buy. But palladium and platinum, that's going to be very unique kind of places that you could go to unload that one. In the end, like, you know, if you're just talking about value of it, like I think holding any kind of metals is a good idea. But just for the simple fact of holding the metal, you know, part of it. Not so much for like the ease and safety of like, you know, having it for bad times, you know, insurance policy. All right. My local bullion coin dealer does deal with platinum and palladium and pays spot or above. Yeah, but I mean that's just it, right? I mean, my local guy will do it too. But what if he's not there? What if he's not there and you want to sell it? Like, who else can you go to? That would be the question for it. Like, you know, you could try, like, I mean, you take a silver bullion and you just start going to the different bars. Eventually, you're going to find somebody in one of those, you know, one of the taverns that's going to, you know, give you some money for that silver. You do the same thing with palladium, you may not find somebody. Like, you know, the chance of you actually finding somebody may be actually pretty hard going to a bar. But with silver, may not be that difficult. Invested in angel dust. Shoot. Yeah, not me. I ain't messing with that. All right. The beautiful thing about America, people can leave if they don't like it. Yeah, they can. That's true. The Economic Ninja says Feds U-turn in 2 or 3 weeks. What say you? Nope. Not in 2-3 weeks. You got a long road ahead of us. That would surprise the hell out of me if the Federal Reserve turned around in 2 or 3 weeks. That's not going to happen. They're going to push to 1.5% on the Fed funds. They're going to go a little bit above that. And what I mean a little bit, like, they're trying to push for 2.5. They think that, I mean, the neutral rate where the Fed is no longer accommodating nor restricting the economy supposedly is the 2.5 mark, somewhere around there. They don't know exactly where it's at. Now, I've read from the Federal Reserve speeches prior to the pandemic and everything that was the common narrative out there, or the common belief, that it was somewhere around the 2.5%. They now feel that it has dropped to somewhere between 0 and 1.5%. They don't know exactly where neutral is. But once they get over neutral, they're going to be restricting the economy. Until then, they're accommodating the economy. So think about it. They're still in an accommodating position, even as of right now, even with all the stuff going on. Okay? So when it comes to the Federal Reserve and their positioning, they are going to continue to raise the interest rates. They're going to get the Fed funds up to that 1.5%, maybe even take it to the 2.5%. I doubt that they're going to get much above that, like the 3 to 4, like a lot of people are talking. Ain't going to happen. I just don't see that. Once they do get it up to there, they may leave it for a minute, like for a few weeks, months, whatever, just try to establish that credibility as far as the rates go. And then something's going to happen in the economy and it's going to be forced to go the other way. Whether more war breaks out or like sovereign debt crisis kicks in or something of that magnitude, there's going to be something major taking place. And then the Federal Reserve is going to move back into quantitative easing. But when they do, it's going to have to be so big. It's going to have to be so massive in order to make up for what they've already done. Like they have to do something far and above what they've already accomplished. Now, if they take some of that away, like if they are able to reduce the balance sheet and bring up the interest rates, they won't have to do as much. But the next time they go into stimulating the economy, in order to actually make it happen, it's going to have to be like far and above everything that they've already done. And then how do you convince that? Like, how do you convince the people to accept government stimulus spending of such magnitude? Like, how do you do that? It's going to be so hard. And the only way to really do it is to give the people a belief that they have no other choice but to accept this. And if there is a sovereign debt crisis, like far stretching around the world or whatever, and everybody is all of a sudden just losing everything they ever had in their entire life and they don't understand what's going on, they're going to beg the government to do something about it. And the Federal Reserve is going to say, like, well, we have this plan, just made it up right here on the spot, right? And didn't have this one already worked into the ideas long ago. So that's where I believe, when that next crisis kicks in, when the Fed has to go back into that monetary easing again, that is going to be a very strange time, because we're going to have to have a situation that the people are going to be accepting of it, right? Be accepting of the stimulus package. And I just don't know where it is that they can go with that, other than UBI, helicopter drop kind of stuff, central bank digital currencies, negative interest rates, all the stuff that, was in fear a couple of years ago will finally come into practice. And yeah, you'll see like bank accounts, literally like your savings account with a negative interest rate attached to it. That's going to be scary. And so, but until then, we're not going to see it in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think so. I mean, we could. I mean, anything can happen. Can applied tech innovation offset Cantillon effect? Probably in some way, but you got to think, like, what is it that's happening? Like, it doesn't matter at some point like what the technology is. It's just what the people's behavior is like. You're producing and you're selling, right? So you produce a lot, pretty soon you realize, man, I got a lot of money. Be nice to do something with this money. Like, what do? Well, you start more businesses. That's what you do. Well, that might be what some people do. A lot of people are like, man, I got a lot of money and I want to drive a new car. I want to wear nice clothes. I want to live in a nicer house. I want to eat better food. And I want to start enjoying this money. So it doesn't really matter how it's made, right? It's just the fact that it's happening, and that you are getting a better standard of living, and that you are trying to increase that standard of living with luxuries. Once you move into luxuries, then that's when the problem really starts to happen. So it's not so much like the technology that would change the Cantillon effect. I think it's the perception that people have on what they do with their money. Like, if you're taking your money and you're investing it, that's one thing. But if you're taking your money and you're blowing it, like, again, back down to beers and saws, that's really what it comes down to. How long have we been out here? 2 hours and 8 minutes. My gosh, how many is there? 663, 674 thumbs up. You guys are just so freaking awesome. Army always had a big bonus for infantry, but rare to see for Navy. Okay. Why send a lot of USD to Ukraine when US is suffering? It's funny because, like, the more money you actually get out and away from the United States, the stronger it actually gets for us, right? The more people who use it, like, exporting dollars is like Like one of the best advantages that we could ever possibly have by living here in the United States. You know, you think about it, it's just like the moment that that changes, our standard of living is going to get really bad. Like trying to produce and acquire for yourself when you import everything, like so much stuff, like that's gonna be a hard road to go down. Abe Lincoln was a war criminal. All lies. Okay. All right. Hoover was the last real president. Even the best lawyers do not represent themselves when it comes to legal issues. Yeah, that's so true. But there's nothing you can do to protect yourself from a violation of your constitutional rights except for being aware of them and protecting them yourself. Because there's no little guy who's going to pop out saying, hey, I think the situation that's going on right now might be a violation of your constitutional right. That doesn't happen. The only person who can protect it at the time that it's happening is you. Now, if there's a situation in which that you're standing in front of a judge and you're explaining what happened from the past, then you should have a lawyer. You should absolutely have a lawyer during that. But at the exact moment that your violation of rights is occurring, you need to be the one that's defending against that. There's nobody else who can do it. And trying to do it after the fact is too late. Yeah. All righty. So, guys, what do you think? We've been out here long enough? Is it time to go? I think it is. We've been out here for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I'm going to go get something to eat and go meet up with a friend. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.